Mike, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Now, is this like Christmas Eve for you when you look at the NFL draft? Does your excitement begin to boil a little bit?
Ryan, it's like planning for a wedding every year. I'll be honest. Man, it's all the details leading up to that day or days, and then it flies by. So, doing it 30 years, there's a certain excitement because of the fact of the unknown. And I think the biggest kind of myth is that most teams have the same draft grade on everyone, and that's not accurate. And there's divisions among people in their own room. And the best quote I've heard, and this was years ago, Jim Finks told me this. He's like, Mike, no one knows what's going to happen on draft day. You can speculate, and you can be close, but no one really knows. And secondly, they got people in our own building that don't know what I'm going to do. So you can see where this kind of goes, and everybody from coaches to scouts to head coaches to general managers all have a different look at sometimes the same guy. That's what makes this so intriguing because of the fact it is Bill Walsh had a great line that the draft is no more than an educated guess on how well a player will turn out in the NFL.
So right now, as we look and about 48 hours away, what are teams doing? What's happening behind the scenes right now in that final evaluation mode?
Well, over the last couple of days, one of the things I want to get straight is if there's any medicals, and there always are, people with medical issues that I want to find out about. I want to know the final word on any kind of rehab, that sort of thing. I want to know it. And the second thing, if there are any red flags on a player, I want to know every little thing that happens as much as I can. And most of these private investigators who teams have, they're well connected to other police agencies, and they can get you a lot of the good information on what goes on. So those are the things, because you've done all your evaluation, you've got your rating up and down, and you've got it pretty much sideways on, this guy fits better in what we do than this individual. And maybe, too, you go back to some of the assistant coaches and their feelings on certain players or player that they've worked out. And last comment to me, don't go run and tell a media guy, 5 days after the draft, well, they picked somebody that I didn't really like. Don't go tell them later. Tell me now. So it's basically kind of dotting the I's, crossing the T's, but a lot of it having to do with medicals, a lot of it off-the-field issues. And the other part is, in me kind of one-on-oneing, if I'm the GM, with my scouts individually and with my coaches, if you got a complaint or if you have a concern, you express it now. Don't do it 2 weeks from now. Do it today with me.
Mike, when we look at getting college coaches involved, Nick Saban has made a statement several times. He said, I'll do a lot of things for players, but I will not lie for you when the NFL. Certainly Saban's built that trust. What kind of questions do they go? I mean, obviously it's football questions, but how important are those interviews like, when you look at these 5 first-rounders that teams are about to invest a lot of money, these Alabama guys, what are they talking to Nick Saban about? Is those conversations already been had, or are they following back and looping back through just to double-check things?
Most of it's already been had. Now, if someone's had some issues, like we've seen with Ruben, you maybe want to go back. I would say, most college coaches that I've spoke to have been very upfront about their players and issues if they've had them with them. Sometimes those issues aren't necessarily off-the-field issues, but maybe a locker room issue, maybe some discourse with an assistant coach. And so you know that already. But if you have someone that, some incident has happened, I would go back. But for the most part, coaches are pretty open about telling you certain things about players. They understand that they want to be honest with you about that player because you are the feeder system to the National Football League. And you don't want to have a reputation of not telling the truth to an NFL team or general manager or a head coach. That was one notorious former head coach who's in broadcasting today that would never say anything bad about any player he had, no matter what. It was all Pollyanna. And so you know one thing, you don't go back to him. Yeah, because he's not going to tell you the entire truth. Now, that's great for the player, but if your relationship is that way with a college coach, you have to be upfront. And I think Nick has done a very good job. This is why you go to these pro days to kind of get these little sessions with a Nick Saban, or if it's a Hugh Freeze or an Ed Orgeron or whoever, if it's Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh. You want that one-on-one, and then to tell you the truth about a player. They know him better than anyone because they've had him either, 3 years, 4 years, 2 years in that time frame. And so they can give you an idea of that player's work ethic, his focus, his intensity, and how well he can translate what you draw up on the blackboard to what happens on the field.
Mike, how far does Reuben Foster drop with some of this latest news, if any? Do you see it affecting Thursday night?
I think he probably drops in the teens, early 20s, but he's not going to take, a huge drop. I just go back to, Laramie Tunsil last year. He was a top 5 pick. He dropped to 13 in the draft. We saw a year before Randy Gregory, who admitted to having a lot of issues at Nebraska. It was no shock. And he was a top 15 pick, and he dropped to 60. So we've seen those sort of slides, I think, with Foster. And, Ryan, I'll be honest with you. I've talked to 3 different defensive coordinators in the NFL since the incident. Every one of them said the same thing. They think that Reuben Foster will make a bigger impact quicker than any other defensive player in this draft class. And I have no problems with Reuben Foster on my team. Because our coaches are Dr. Phil. They can solve any issue. And I want him because I know how good of a player he is. So I think he probably slides out of the top 10 into the high teens, maybe early 20s, but he's not taking a big dip.
So right now, as we are now hours away, you still see 5 Alabama guys going in that first round: Marlon Humphrey, Cam Robinson, Reuben Foster, Jonathan Allen, and O.J. Howard. I'm sorry, I went blank there for a second. Those 5 guys still going in the first round, according to what you think. I know it's just a guess.
Yes,
but
yes. I would be surprised if they didn't have 5 going round 1. Again, you know those players pretty well. You've evaluated them. You've had a long time. Archie Manning and I were talking about this last night. We had a function to do, and he was like, let me tell you what my draft day was like. I went and played in 2 postseason bowl games, and I played in the Hula Bowl. I got married, came back off of, getting married and a little small honeymoon. I was back in class at 9:15. I was told to go at the athletic department's phone. They called me up and told me the Saints had picked me. I spoke 2 minutes to the owner, about a minute to the head coach, about a minute and a half to the general manager, and I went back to class. That's wow. 1971. He's the second pick in the draft. So, has the evaluation gotten better throughout the years with the process or worse? It's basically the same. You still have big misses. With all the information that's crammed into that 3-month time frame, you're no better hitting on draft picks today than you were back in the late 60s, early 70s. So there's a lot of confusion also to head coaches getting involved, of saying, I know what's best for my team instead of a scout. And I've had a lot of scouts tell me head coaches intervening and saying, I want that player. He's maybe seen him play on film and, watched him maybe at the Senior Bowl, Combine. But, a lot of coaches today, they got chalk in their hands. They got the final say. And so there's always going to be hits and misses. You cannot gauge what fame and fortune will do to an athlete once they instantly become a millionaire. And secondly, athletic fate with injuries. Sometimes, it does happen.
Let me go to this quarterback situation. Are we overvaluing it? And certainly we've talked about Deshaun Watson, Trubisky there, other quarterbacks. Are we overvaluing these guys right now? How bad of a quarterback class is this?
It's an average class, but the need is a terrible negotiator in life for anything. And you look, there are probably a dozen teams in the NFL looking to get better at the quarterback position. And you look at this league with a Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Roethlisberger, Rivers, Manning. You can kind of go down the list. Alex Smith in Kansas City. That's a lot of guys getting up there in age. Where's the next group? Now, next year's draft class is pretty strong at quarterback, but I just think the need today to find you a guy that can be the signal caller for you is going to oversee draft grades. And that's why I think the biggest surprise could be you could see 2 quarterbacks go in the top 10 in this draft class. There shouldn't be any if you just go by ratings. But because of need, and again, it's a horrible negotiator in life, but for a lot of these teams, they feel as though I got to get him now, and I got to win today, and even rolling the dice on guys that they know are not going to be players maybe until 2 years from now. What I call winning players out on the field. That Dak Prescott thing, that happens every once in a while. But, Ryan, we've done this a long time. That doesn't happen every year. To have a rookie quarterback step in, look like a seasoned vet. Yeah, and people said, oh, well, anybody could play behind that offensive line. Well, I saw anybody 2 years ago. Those 3 veteran quarterbacks stunk behind that offensive line. Now, Ezekiel Elliott helped, but Dak Prescott, how he played last year, is unprecedented. You don't see that happen a lot. So, but I do think the need for quarterbacks come into play here. It wouldn't shock me at all. You see 3 quarterbacks picked in the top 15 and 2 go in the top 10 because of the need element.
But looking at this element right now, when you talk about need, there's a guy sitting there in Cincinnati that's just waiting for the Cincinnati Bengals to do a call. I know you and I have talked about A.J. McCarron before. I believe in the guy. I think the guy is a winner. Certainly I'm biased from being here in Tuscaloosa. Why would those teams not call and say, what are you looking for? What would it take to get A.J. McCarron?
I think that Cincinnati probably has got that call and probably will get more calls for him. I don't have any doubt that he will be someone to make that call. What I can't answer you is what the answer they get back from the Bengals. I do know they want more than a first-round pick for him. So, depending on what the Bengals answer back, I think is the key here. Because I feel like you. I'm not from Alabama, but I've seen A.J. play enough. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL somewhere. And my first phone call, if I'm one of those lower-tier teams looking for a quarterback, depending on the price that it would cost for me to get A.J. in, I would take a long look at it. It's going to cost me some money, though, to sign him to a long-term deal. And a lot of times finances get involved in here, where in the NFL draft, you're slotted. You know what you're going to get paid. And basically, as a first-round pick, you have a 5th-year option with him. A.J. is going to cost you more than that financially. But I do think, Ryan, that phone call has been made to Cincinnati on what it would cost to get McCarron. And I think they'll get more as the draft gets closer.
Okay, so let's say that we make it through Thursday and Friday and no news with A.J. McCarron. Does that mean that Cincinnati's probably going to hold on to him and they're not going to budge with what they're asking as far as the value?
Yeah, I think if it would happen either Thursday or very early on the Friday from a team that maybe thought they would get a particular quarterback in round 1 and figure A.J. is my best option right now. Let's make a deal. So I think it happens either Thursday, if it's going to happen, or very early in the process on Friday. But again, what I can't tell you is what has been the response from Cincinnati. And who the hell knows how they run their organization. That's been a mystery tour across the board on how they put in draft grades, how they look at certain people, that sort of thing. But my thing is, I got a hot commodity here that I could get something back in return in a big way. I don't want to trade him to another AFC team, though. So I would try to deal him off to an NFC team.
Mike, I mean, I'm just asking your opinion. Would you take an A.J. McCarron over to Shaun Watson?
At this point, if I got to win, yeah. If I got to win tomorrow. Because now, depending on the cost, that's the other thing.
Okay.
Depending on the cost value, not only in what I got to give up, but what I have to pay AJ. Because, if you're bringing me in as a starting quarterback, my thing is pay me like a starter. If I'm McCarron, my thing is, okay, you want me in as a starter, pay me as a starter. And so that's always a little tricky area involved with that. But I do suspect that there will be some teams ringing that phone to the Bengals about McCarron because they may feel as though he's the best option at this point, especially if New England holds forth and says, we're not going to deal Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I don't believe anything the Patriots tell me until it actually happens. So until he doesn't get traded, that I think is always an option there because I can always tell you I'm not going to deal you, but if you come up with the right deal, then I'm willing to do it. So if you can't deal for Garoppolo, wouldn't my best option at this point, if I'm looking for a veteran, wouldn't it be A.J. McCarron?
The guy's proven that he can win at that next level, and he won here in Tuscaloosa a lot of games. Mike, let me ask you about Adrian Peterson going to the Saints. How does that affect Mark Ingram?
Doesn't affect him at all. Mark's been a guy that's been nicked up in his pro career, and Adrian Peterson's going to be the number 2 guy behind Ingram, 32-year-old running back. Man, he's had more carries under his belt, Ryan, than O.J. Simpson and Earl Campbell and Larry Zonka and Jimmy Taylor and Paul Hornung and Terrell Davis did when they retired. So you got a guy with a lot of mileage. How much left does he have in the gas tank, and can he stay healthy? Mark Ingram's still the number 1 back with the Saints, and there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. He's the number 1 guy. I think this sort of tells me that maybe Shaun it would try to show a little bit more patience in the running game. I've never felt as though they used Ingram correctly in New Orleans, and maybe some of that has to do with the injury part. But, for the Saints, Shaun and Bill Parcells, his mentor, said it best. Sometimes he gets the pass virus. He has no patience with the running game. And Shaun's a tremendous play caller, but he gets itchy if they're down by a touchdown or 10 points, and he jettisons the running game. And I think that's wrong. And if that means because Peterson's here, it'll better that, I'm all for it. I do know the numbers, and people will argue, well, a lot of those numbers came late in the fourth quarter, and some of them did. But they're 42-4 when they rush the football 30 times or more in a game. And that's patience from start to finish in a running, in a game. Some games aren't built like that. You got to throw it a lot. But I just think this team has been very impatient with their running game. But Peterson's signing has a lot more to do with losing Tim Hightower than it is how they feel about Ingram, who's their number 1 guy.
Hey, Mike, I know I'm out of time, but did you happen to see Alabama's spring game and that new freshman gunslinger they've got here in T-Town?
Yeah, I sure did.
That guy can
flat out.
Yeah, for a freshman.
Listen, I think a lot of him, I've told you this on the air and off the air, I think by the end of the season, he's going to be the starter at quarterback. I really think that way. He's very talented, real sharp, throws the ball on balance with accuracy, and you got quite a catch. And all those young defenders, too. That's impressive to watch of what they have. And I think sometimes when you have a veteran group that leaves graduation, man, it's the young kids that want to prove themselves. And that'll be exciting to watch. And you couldn't ask for a better opener than to go up against Florida State, whose talent, when you look at it 1 through 90, is pretty doggone close. So it's an interesting season for Alabama. And yet, all I know is in having left Vegas, I know who they think is going to be the number 1 team in the country.
Hey,
they don't have them bright lights at those nice hotels because they lose money.